You were told the world is loud, that power shouts, that winners roar and take and brand their name on the sky. But step closer and you hear a different frequency, a colder one, a quiet that organizes noise into profit. Power in the modern city lives behind soft doors and calm eyes. It moves through policies, meetings, edits. It manifests in what never becomes public, what never becomes a headline, what never even becomes a thought, because it was removed in the draft before the draft. The powerful do not wrestle to the floor. They rearrange the floor plan. They do not outwork the masses. They outweight them. And you notice it most when markets shake, when hands tremble. The coldest hand stays still. They told you to work hard, but hard work is the leash. The powerful don't run faster. They move quieter, because control isn't taken with speed, it's taken with silence. You think of the trader staring at the countdown of a volatile close. The index is burning. Retail chat rooms are pleading, and yet he sits, patient as winter. He has learned the mathematics of stillness. Panic is liquidity. Someone else must supply it. He provides nothing but silence, and silence buys him everything he wants at a discount. And in that silence, the truth whispers. The first Machiavellian lesson is not ruthlessness, it is restraint. Emotion costs. It leaks information, misprices risk, telegraphs intent. The cold hold their breath longer than the market can convulse. They cultivate latency in the nervous system. They rehearse non-reaction like monks of a secular monastery. Not because they lack feeling, but because they price it. Anger is expensive. Pride is noisy. Outrage is a confession that you can be steered. But what if your heat is their harvest? What if your outrage is pre-packaged into a product line? Consider how volatility becomes revenue. The algorithm that turns spikes in sentiment, teehee into bids, the coverage that converts public shock into advertising slots, the options trader who thanks your fear for his weekend home. The cold become kings by compounding the spread between what the crowd feels and what reality costs. They toll the bridge between emotion and event. Here's the part no one dares to admit. The rich don't merely predict the waves. They manufacture them. Not entirely, not as gods, but enough. They time narratives. They seed expectations. They withhold comment until the price moves itself. Then, like a lion waiting in tall grass, they shift weight once, decisive and unhurried. And in that silence, the truth whispers. You begin to see the paradox. The louder the public demands change, the more data the elite receive. The more chaotic the discourse, the clearer the opportunity map. Emotion is a lighthouse. Patience is the shoreline. Those who hold their breath see the wrecks before anyone else. They bring the salvage to market at dawn. If you listen long enough, patterns surface. Calm is a weapon. Delay is leverage. Distance is armor. The cold do not abandon feeling. They subordinate it. They file it into a cabinet labeled "Not Now," because the arena punishes the heartbeat that rushes. The room will bait you. It will tempt you to prove yourself, to speak first, to show the pulse you have. And every time you do, someone colder prices it. And yet, the truth is darker. The silent war of wealth does not end with a single victory. It is maintenance. It is the daily discipline of non-reaction, the habit of reading 2 beats beneath any event, the refusal to be summoned by noise. It asks a question of you that is uncomfortable. Can you learn to feel deeply and respond slowly? In your quiet answer, the first door opens. Power begins where the pulse ends. And in that silence, the truth whispers. You grew up inside a blueprint you were never shown. You mistook walls for weather. You thought the way things are is the way things must be. But when you stand still, you notice the carpentry, incentives, schedules, rituals, a choreography of compliance in soft shoes. Schools teach punctuality. Markets teach dependence. Entertainment teaches sedation. Alone, each seems harmless. Together, they build an interior cage. Busy, hopeful, indebted. Busy people don't revolt. Hopeful people don't question. Indebted people don't leave. The chains don't clink, they auto-renew. Consent is harvested with a smile. And in that silence, the truth whispers. A boy asks permission to speak. 20 years later, he asks permission to dream. The habit has migrated from classroom to bloodstream. Meetings become ceremonies of permission-seeking. Promotions become lotteries of acceptance. Meanwhile, somewhere far from the fluorescent lights, a boardroom speaks of access. Not your access to wealth, wealth's access to you. But what if merit is the decoy? What if the scoreboard is designed to keep you playing without ever letting you own the field? Wages track obedience more faithfully than talent. Debt trains patience more efficiently than law. Subscription replaces ownership, and the illusion of choice says the reality of power. Here's the part no one dares to admit. Poverty is not primarily a mystery. It is a margin, a line item on someone else's income statement. The system must produce it to sustain price, scarcity, hierarchy. If everyone wins, value collapses. So narratives are tuned to keep the many almost there, close enough to see, far enough to continue. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Language is the scaffold you never question. Career path, performance review, retirement plan. These phrases smuggle assumptions about time, loyalty, and where the throne sits. Even rebellion is domesticated. Flexible work, they promise, as they measure you by keystrokes. Creator economy, they sing, as platforms tighten the faucet of reach. The architecture holds because it colonizes your attention. It builds a cathedral of later. Later you will be free. Later you will own. Later you will live. But later is a currency the system prints without limit. But what if you stopped asking for permission? Not as a slogan, as an operating system. What if you repointed your obedience away from institutions and toward principles? Away from applause and toward cash flow. Away from the stage and toward the ledger. The design doesn't want you to think in these terms. It wants you on the infinite treadmill of prove. Prove your value. Prove your loyalty. Prove your identity. The more you prove, the more data they own. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Control in a soft regime doesn't look like a boot. It looks like terms of service. It looks like dashboards. It looks like the pleasant friction that lowers your radius of motion 1 degree per day. Advertising reinforces the narrative. Policy pressures the edges. Algorithms fog the distance. Each instrument is gentle. The symphony, relentless. You begin to measure differently. You watch for who owns the verbs, who can say launch, ban, freeze, mint, merge. Ownership of verbs is ownership of fate. And then you make a vow. The architecture fears to become uneasily owned, to turn from permission to positioning, to treat your time as equity, to convert your skills into assets that pay while you sleep, and your outrage into nothing at all. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Look at an ordinary object under an extraordinary light. A watch, a phone, a shoe. On Monday, it is just material. By Friday, it is an event. Music arrives, a story leaks, a controversy blooms. The price rises as if gold were poured into plastic. But nothing changed, except the collective heartbeat. Emotion is the cheapest raw material for manufacturing consent and value. Provoke, polarize, withhold closure. Humans will pay to end a feeling. They will pay to belong to a mood. They will pay to be told what they already fear. In the dark rooms where narratives are mixed, the recipe is simple. Attach meaning, amplify conflict, provide purchase. Then step back and let the crowd complete the ritual. And in that silence, the truth whispers. The auctioneer of attention does not shout, he tunes. He knows that anger is sticky, sadness is honest, and fear travels fastest. He understands how the limbic stem hijacks the prefrontal ledger. He knows that when your hands shake, you become generous, with data, with time, with money. Platforms convert irritations into lanes, lanes into loops, loops into habits. Each habit is a market. Each market is a lever. But what if your voice is not a vote? What if expression is the cheapest commodity of all? You feel powerful when you post. You feel righteous when you argue. Yet the masters of value never argue in public. They price in private. They monetize your catharsis while you confuse noise with influence. Here's the part no one dares to admit. Outrage wears a mask called impact, but it often buys nothing. The measurable leverage belongs to those who hold the pipes, not the water. The platform, not the post. The marketplace, not the booth. Emotional intelligence in this game is not empathy as therapy. It is latency as strategy. How slowly can your hand move when the room is on fire? And in that silence, the truth whispers. A rumor is started. The model predicts cascade. The timing is optimal. Friday afternoon, writers' liquidity thins and headlines thicken. The crowd performs on cue. Sell low, buy high, repeat. The cold step aside and let math do the speaking. Later, they return to collect what panic priced. But what if you learned to break the loop? What if you trained yourself to be biologically expensive, to make your dopamine rare, your outrage scarce, your attention hard to extract? The few who do become unreadable. They walk through markets like fog through steel. They feel, but they don't feed. And in that silence, the truth whispers. The alchemy becomes clear. Emotion, data, control, profit. Change any link and the spell weakens. Refuse to donate predictable spikes of sentiment, the data dulls. Refuse to perform on schedule, the control stutters. Refuse to pay for closure, the profit drops. You don't need to smash the machine, you need to stop powering it for free. So you adopt a colder cadence. You let the wave pass. You replace the question, how do I feel, with what does this change? You replace, should I respond, with what do I own? You watch the auctioneer of attention smile a little less when you do. He can't price silence, he can't predict. And in that silence, the truth whispers. The powerful never arrive fully explained. They arrive as mist over a valley, outline without detail, rumor without signature. Ambiguity is not their mistake. It is their strategy. When adversaries must guess, they hedge. When they hedge, they concede. Strategy begins with distance. The colder players practice ritualized delay. They hold options longer than others can tolerate uncertainty. They release information on a lag, so their timing appears as prophecy. They design scarcity from time, not supply. Your time becomes the moat around your castle. A calendar is a weapon when you control who trespasses, and in that silence, the truth whispers. Masks matter. Brand separated from body. Persona separated from person. You build a figure that can be attacked without bruising your skin. You create redundancy, multiple income streams, narratives, exits. You rehearse failure route. You learn to be 2 moves late in public and 2 moves early in private. You never chase victory, you structure inevitability. But what if you need to move the board itself? Then create mirages, invitations instead of items, whispers instead of announcements. Let others carry your myth because myths self-replicate. A well-timed concession becomes a fortress, a public loss that buys a year of peace, a strategic apology that removes a target from your back. Mercy, when visible, can be a form of camouflage. Here's the part no one dares to admit. Generosity scales better than aggression when you own the rules. Foundations soften edges. Influencers sing hymns. Lawyers draw borders. Data aims without raising your voice. You don't silence critics. You redirect them into corridors that exhaust them. You don't block competition. You price their oxygen. And in that silence, the truth whispers. The geometry of power is angles, distances, fulcrums. A small tilt in the frame, and people choose between two options, both of which you prepared. You isolate choke points, distribution, standards, infrastructure. You train your instincts around verbs again. What can you unilaterally launch, freeze, revoke? The colder you get, the more your threats become embedded in fabric, not words. But what if a direct fight is unavoidable? Then you compress the battlefield. You refuse broad conflicts. You narrow the terms, shift the clock, choose the terrain. You trade skirmishes for sieges. You pay in time instead of blood. And you always leave an exit for your opponent, because trapped enemies are unpredictable and chaos has no yield. And in that silence, the truth whispers. The mask is not a lie. It is a tool. The mirage is not deceit. It is pacing. The mechanism is not cruelty. It is clarity. You learn the posture of the oak in winter, utterly still, storing energy, impossible to read. You become comfortable with being misunderstood today if it purchases advantage tomorrow. The commentary roars, but commentary has no balance sheet. Only actions accrue. The final movement of strategy is subtraction. Remove impulses, remove tells, remove access. The less of you the world can easily consume, the more of the world you can shape without being consumed. Cold is not a temperature here. It is an interface, a layer that filters out everything that does not compound. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Awakening does not feel heroic. It feels like walking backstage and seeing the ropes. You realize how headlines steer purchase orders, how charity calendars polish reputations before mergers, how apologies arrive at market close. You are not disenchanted. You are clarified. The conflict begins inside. Once you see the machine, can you still sing in its choir? Some return to sleep. Others become bitter. The useful few become precise. They refuse the posture of victimhood and the posture of spectacle. They choose the posture of architect, quiet, deliberate, unsentimental about what works. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Your evolution is not into a tyrant, but into a reader of systems. You reduce opinion, expand optionality. You treat your energy as capiz, tal, and your attention as scarce. You build a small empire of cash flows that do not need your constant presence. You master the language that moves capital, terms, mechanisms, rights, because poetry without contracts is applause without equity. But what if the world demands your heat? What if it insists you perform outrage, that you pick a side, that you burn hours proving what you already know? Then you become expensive to summon. You train your reflex to be a question. What do I own here? If the answer is nothing, you exit. If the answer is leverage, you act. You speak less, so your words have weight. You argue rarely, so your silence has sharp edges. Here's the part no one dares to admit. Application is not cinematic. It is quiet replication of advantage. Acquire productive assets. Simplify the plan to a metronome. Earn, store, allocate, reinvest. Design for cash flow over applause, for durability over spectacle. Treat attention as a derivative, not the asset. The asset is ownership. The asset is time. And in that silence, the truth whispers. You refine your stance toward risk. You don't avoid it, you price it. You cap exposure where ruin lives. You enter asymmetric bets where upside compounds and downside is cut at the knees. You become suspicious of any move that flatters your ego while weakening your position. You learn to walk away earlier than the crowd finds it fashionable. You make peace with being misunderstood because comprehension is a lagging indicator. But what if kingship is not a crown but a cadence, not applause but a temperature? The cold are not inhuman. They are disciplined. They carry warmth in private and precision in public. They love people and distrust crowds. They cherish friendship and interrogate mobs. They understand that moral clarity without strategic literacy is self-sabotage in noble clothing. The resolution arrives without trumpet. Power isn't control over others. It's control over self. Self as system. Self as sovereign territory with guarded borders and long horizons. And from this inner dominion, you can finally engage the world without being erased by it. You can step into markets and politics and culture without donating your nervous system to every passing storm. And in that silence, the truth whispers. The city still hums, the screens still blink, the auctions of feeling still run on time. But your pulse is steady. You are not immune. You are informed. You are not invulnerable. You are unreadable. The cold did not make you cruel. They made you clear, and clarity is the first crown that no one can take. And in that silence, the truth whispers. You've walked behind the curtain. You've seen the ropes. You've felt how design wears the mask of destiny, how emotion becomes a toll road, how narratives shepherd the obedient gently toward the gate. If you've come this far, you already sense it. The pattern beneath the pattern. The pulse you no longer donate on demand. The attention you no longer spend like loose change. You are colder now, but not colder in heart, colder in interface, warmer in intention, clearer in aim. So stay. Keep thinking. Keep choosing C. Lens, where noise wants to own you. Return for the next inquiry, not for distraction, but for discipline. Not for content, but for calibration. This is not merely a channel, it's a circle of awareness. People who would rather be sovereign than entertained, lucid rather than loud. Subscribe, not to follow, but to remember. To revisit clarity before the algorithms reclaim your pulse. To keep sharpening the tools, leverage, narrative, restraint. Because awareness is a weapon, and silence is its sheath. If you are ready to see deeper, step into the quiet with us. The world won't grow fairer. You will grow clearer. And in that clarity, you'll stop being the prey of design and become its architect.